You're live.
I'd like to call to order the Jackson County Board of County Commissioners special meeting for 3 p.m. on the 26th. We are not going to do the invocation and the pledge at this meeting. We'll do that later this evening. So let's go right into community development. Ms. Willan?
Actually, Wendy's Messenger is going to open.
Okay.
What are we supposed to?
Hey, stand by a minute. Clint's lost.
No, we were supposed to have something at our desk.
Don't you have the agenda?
Should be on the inside of your folder, left side.
Got to learn to decipher.
Sorry, Miss Wendy.
No worries. Thank you, Commissioners. As you know, we met with you all back in December on the 8th and gave you an overview of how folks living in uninhabitable structures are impacting the county. And so today we have some special guests with us that will share from their perspective how this affects the county and perhaps their offices and the community. We are also going, in your package, you have an affidavit that goes along with a new application to be considered, not today, but just want to make you aware that it's in your packet. Thank you. And also, I would like you to remember that we are still working with housing and unmet needs. That's something very important. And so I'd like for you to have your vision of how you'd like to see Jackson County tomorrow, 10 years, 25, 50 years from now. And so we will have the perspective from various guests. And if I may, I'm going to go ahead and read the names off. And Mr. Chairman, once we begin, if you wouldn't mind calling up the next person.
I think I can handle that.
Thank you. So Mr. Chris Rito with Appalachia Regional Planning Council, he's the Executive Director. He will start us off today. We have Richard Williams from Opportunity Florida, Career Source Chipola, the Executive Director. Ms. Christy Terry, North Florida Inland Long-Term Recovery Executive Director. Ms. Kathy Milton, Realtor with Chipola Realty. Jeff Johnson, Jackson County Sheriff's Office, Telecommunications System Director and with E911 addressing. Rebecca Morris Hayes, Property Appraiser. Mary Carol Murdoch, Tax Collector. Christy Andresen, Tourist Development Council Director. T.G. Harkrider, Florida Health Environmental Manager. And Tyler Lipford, Planning Commissioner at Large. And we are going to ask each presenter to try to keep their information to about 3 minutes. And then commissioners, if you all have questions following their presentation.
Is Mr. Lipford here?
I'll double check and see if he may be running late. He's last on the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for coming today. We appreciate it. This is a problem in Jackson County that we're faced with, and it's going to take a lot of work to solve it. I'm not saying that we will resolve the issue today, but let's dive into it and see where we can go. Chris, are you ready?
I am, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
I'll get started. I'm just going to cover 2 issues very briefly. The first one is from a planning perspective, why RVs are recommended to be stationed in RV parks if they're used as a residence. But first, I would just want to clarify and give you the quick definition on a recreational vehicle, an RV. It's designed as a temporary living quarters for recreation, camping, or travel use that either has its own mode of power or is mounted on or drawn by another vehicle. Some examples include travel trailers, fifth wheels, camping trailers, truck campers, motor homes, private motor coach, van conversion, and park model RV/park trailers. And that's as defined in Florida statutes chapter or section 320.01. Couple of considerations when you're dealing with RVs is, again, being viewed as temporary living quarters. And aside, these are not mobile homes. This is recreational vehicles. Disposal of gray and black water. Gray water is obviously your water that you use for washing your hands and showering. Black water is sewage that will have to be disposed of when you're using when you're using an RV. Leakage of mechanical fluids and fuel. Some of the RVs are motorized, so you will have to deal with all the mechanical fluids that are associated with a motorized vehicle. RVs are built as temporary, they're structures, they're not durable. I own a travel trailer. I can attest to this. I've had one for 10 years. They're not built to last. They're designed to be temporary. They do obviously require a connection to potable water and electrical service connections. Each RV has those. A lot of folks will just hook them up to a generator. Even some of the newer RVs, you can actually use solar panels as well. RV parks and mobile home parks that allow for RVs provide some essential services, and it makes sense as to why you want to try to designate an area for recreational vehicles. They have structures that can be designated as emergency shelters in case there's a storm or something comes through. Folks can get out of a recreational vehicle and get into an emergency shelter. They're equipped with facilities for the removal of gray and black water. You obviously don't want that just being dumped in areas that aren't equipped for that. They also have facilities for bathing, laundry. They have connections for potable water, and they have electrical service connections. A lot quieter, as we all know, after a disaster and there is no electricity. Generators do add a little bit of noise to the environment. So local governments often have post-disaster recovery ordinances related to recreational vehicles. We understand, obviously, after a disaster, RVs are a great solution to housing, but keeping in mind they're just not suited, as a permanent residence. So with these ordinances, it comes with allowing temporary housing for residents who lost their homes due to disaster. It establishes, these ordinances often establish procedures for rebuilding. And the ordinances often consider establishing a disaster housing plan. You do this on the front end before you have a disaster, so you know that, okay, if we lost a significant portion of residential area, how can let's put an ordinance in place to allow for RVs to move in so folks can come in and rebuild. We have some examples from across the state of local governments that have used that before. Second part, I just want to cover very quickly. From a planning perspective, what are the impacts of RVs or uninhabitable structures on the community? And just going in line with RVs, since that's what I've been talking about. RVs are considered a temporary housing solution for post-disaster recovery in Florida and elsewhere. RVs can become a violation when they avoid permits, which may lead to environmental and public health issues. When they're not properly hooked up to electric, water, septic, sewer, etc. RVs also avoid ad valorem property taxes, which can impact local schools and utility systems if they're viewed as a permanent residence. That pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about in my 3 minutes. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Chris, you're talking about ad valorem, but don't you have to put some sort of a tag or a sticker on these vehicles?
Absolutely, you do. You do have to register these vehicles. That, as far as ad valorem, the fees typically associated with a tag, I'm not positive that would actually help you in your ad valorem revenue, though. I'm not certain on that.
Are there any other questions from the board? Mr. McKinney, do you have any questions?
No question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Richard Williams, Opportunity, Florida. So I just want to
start by saying thank you to the commissioners for the invitation and all that you're doing to try to help the region and the county recover from Hurricane Michael. It's been a long time. And you know, I've been doing this for a long time now myself. And I remember when I first started out, probably about 25 years ago, we had two big issues we thought in the region. And one was broadband and the other was workforce housing. And I'm sitting here today saying we still have two big issues in the region, and that is broadband and workforce housing.
We're going to solve that problem.
We're going to get them. I got you. You know, it's no secret that the region and Jackson County included was already facing a housing issue prior to the devastation caused by Hurricane Michael. The high number of homes damaged overall and the high number of homes damaged without insurance and the general economic condition of our region make recovery an even tougher challenge than that's faced by coastal communities. Let's just be honest about it. If you've got salt water, it cures a lot of things. They've got a lot of resources that we don't have. And you're seeing that today, I think, as you look at the housing recovery down in Bay County versus what you're seeing in this area. And a lot of that has to do with the resources that are available. To prepare for this, I talked to multiple economists, economic development professionals, and the one consistent message that I heard and one that I've believed since the time the hurricane struck is that those parts of the region that use this as an opportunity to improve the quality and quantity of workforce housing are going to be the parts of the region that recover and prosper. And the parts of the region that do not take advantage of this to bring that level of workforce housing back up above where it was before the event, they're going to suffer. And so I commend you for taking a hard look at this issue. I'm not saying that we don't need some short-term fixes. We do. But I'm also saying that I think our focus has to be on the long term. We have to figure out how to move this issue forward and solve that workforce housing issue. From an economic development standpoint, it plays a lot on how people look at this region and who wants to come here. One of the things that happens these days is before a prospect ever comes in, they're coming around and looking at your county. And quite frankly, what they see makes a big impression on them. And so if they're seeing a bunch of people living in substandard housing, that tells them a lot, rightfully or not, about the quality of the workforce in the region. And it is a detriment. I encourage the county to press the state to implement various housing funding sources we were told would be available. I would encourage you to invite the state to come in here, DEO, DEM, name any other letters you want to that might have housing money, and come in here and talk with us about where that money's at and why we're not seeing more of it already flowing into this area more than 2 years after that storm event. This morning, I was on a conference call with the Florida Housing Finance Corporation Executive Director, Trey Price. During that call, we discussed issues that are facing these counties based on workforce housing. And so the Florida Rural Economic Development Association is going to be hosting a webinar we're putting together to invite local government officials. We're going to invite developers, real estate agents, investors, and other interested parties to talk about it both on a statewide level for rural communities. But then we're going to come back and we're going to host individual regional sessions to talk about workforce housing and how we can get those solutions. One of the things that I would say that we've got to do is we've got to press those parties that have those funds available to come in. In talking with the Florida Housing Finance Corporation as an example, I think one opportunity you may have here is you've got that 300 acres sitting out at the Endeavor property. Let's see if the county, as the owner of that property, might be able to work with the Florida Housing Finance Corporation to help develop that property in a very strategic way so that you can use that property and other assets you've got to improve the workforce availability in this region. I can tell you as a workforce director, I've got employers begging for people to go to work, and that was an issue prior to the hurricane. It was an issue prior to COVID, and it continues to be an issue today. One of the reasons it's an issue is because of housing. I will tell you now, I don't have a solution for your short-term problem, but I will tell you that the solution is not just to hit short-term. The solution is you've got to look long-term. Look at everything you're doing around housing. Let's look at it. And what can we do to make it more available for people to move into housing? What can we do to make it easier for developers to build housing? What can we do to make it easier for the employers in this region to have workers living in the county? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any questions from the board? Mr. McKinney?
Richard, real quick, just for clarification, you mentioned that Bay County was much farther ahead with their workforce housing redevelopment than we are. Is that
That's the indication that everybody that I talk to, that's been the take that I've heard from them. But the major factor is not anything that you've done, it's just simply the resources that are available. I mean, they've from day one, they've got more money, more investors, more developers, more builders. And let's just be honest about it. The closer you are to salt water, the more money you can get out of a house. The same house sitting closer to that salt water has a difference in price. And if I'm a developer, you know, that's also where those people go. I mean, they've had properties set aside, ready to go. And I think they also did a very good job of looking at everything from their building department to their county regulations and what have we got in place that maybe there's a fee we can waive. I was talking with Terry Burrows down in Okeechobee County. They did away, I don't let anybody slap me here, but they did away with their impact fees because they were looking at if that was stopping people from coming in and building houses because of those costs. Well, if you're getting nothing, it doesn't matter how much you're charging the fee on, you're getting nothing. So if you could waive those fees, get more people to build the house, you're bumping up your ad valorem, and maybe that gets you more money in the long run than charging the fees. Just examples of things I think we could look at.
Commissioner Hill?
Yeah, and I agree with you, Richard. And it's a daunting task. I think Walton County is one of the few counties in our area that has the most diverse area of Okaloosa, Santa Rosa, maybe. I think Walton County, I think they're the seventh fastest growing county in the United States right now. And I have property just east of there on the beach. And so the problem Walton County and other ones have is in that area, you have Cecilia Jones, I think, was a chairwoman a couple of years ago of the board over there, and she said that they had set aside land, kind of like we're looking at with the 320 down here on Poozle Road. But the problem you have is most of the people that go to the beach in saltwater are investors, even if they are homeowners. They don't buy $1 million+ houses to sit and then live in their primary home in Kentucky or Tennessee. They go there with a primary goal, and the land cost analysis for tier beachfront to tier about 8 is astronomical. They couldn't find wages or housing for teachers and just EMTs because of the cost. It pushed them in the north part of the farming community of Walton County. And I think that's one thing we don't have to address. And not only that, it's not just the investors where they're throwing the money, it's the cost analysis of the building. I mean, if you tell someone to leave the beaches area and come up here where they're making $250 and $275 a square foot and let them build you a house for 80 up in Jackson County, I mean, economics dictates that, as you've indicated. I think it is a complex question, and it is compounded by the price, especially now, of lumber. I mean, I've got friends that have stopped multi-million-dollar projects because the price of lumber has went up 40 and 60%, sometimes 100% in the course of since June of this year. So it's something we don't have to look at from a holistic approach, but at the same time, we don't have to look at that transition point because, again, the future is dictated by what we do today. But at the same time, we got to be very mindful that transition from somewhere where what point they are now, post-Michael or even pre-Michael, economically, that's going to have to be a bigger effort than just us holding our own hands.
And I think you would know also that you did have, and we knew this was going to happen, we were told this was going to happen. You had individuals that were living on the coast that as their housing got wiped out, they couldn't afford to rebuild there, so they pushed up to the north, and they're still working on the coast, which means that's taking away houses from our workforce that's working here, and so that's a problem. But I would also say, for example, my son's a teacher here at the middle school, and he bought a piece of property out close to the middle school, a house out there, and he did it through one of the programs where they gave him money for a down payment. As long as he lives in that house for 5 years, he doesn't have to repay that portion that they gave him. And so he moved, quite frankly, from Liberty County to up here, and he's thrilled because he's right by the school that he's teaching at, and he loves it. But that's an example of a program that converted him into a homeowner.
Mr. Williams, I'd appreciate it if you will facilitate some conversation between the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, myself, and Ms. Daniels. But I got one question, and you may know the answer and you may not. How many houses do you think we need to meet workforce housing?
I do not know the answer to that. However, we're working with both, made contact with an independent economist, and with the Florida State University, trying to get some people to look at that very question for us. And we've got a proposal out there that we're waiting on responses on now to give us that answer.
I mean, 300 acres, 320 acres, we could possibly, within maybe 1,200 homes,
I can't give you an answer to that right now, but that is
If you
something
get an
we're working on.
answer, would you share that with us?
I think we can derive some of that from easy mathematics. How many people do we have living in unoccupied or uncertified engineered drawing houses now in Jackson County? Mike, you might have a number that we can, not off the top of your head, that we can derive from in the future to find out how many people living in RVs that we know of, how many people living in unrestricted, coded buildings.
And how many people do you have that would live here if they had the housing available? For
Sure.
example, my son looked for a while before he found something up here. He wanted to move here. And you've also got I'll give the example I use is Family Dollar. When Family Dollar first came in, we got calls for people wanting to take jobs at Family Dollar all the way from Washington State. We got them from all over the country. And I personally talked with somebody from Washington State and said, why in the world are you wanting to apply? And this was not a high-level job. This was an entry-level job. Why are you wanting to come from Washington State here to apply for a job at Family Dollar? And their answer to me was, I want to come home. I think it was their grandmother got up with them and told them, you got a chance to come home now. And so I think you've got a lot of people out there that would love to come back here to live, but they got to find a place to live.
I can think of a better reason to leave Washington State. Okay.
Very valid one, I'm sure.
Ms. Christy Terry.
Hey there. Thank you for having me today. Chris and Richard said it all. I think that what they are seeing and reporting back is certainly what we're seeing as well. I don't have that much data on, all I can speak from is since the storm and what we're seeing with our caseload. And that is that people are becoming a little more desperate at times. And so they are seeing the sheds and the RVs as their only option. To piggyback on what Richard said about the programs that could be available but have not been launched yet, I think that is one component of what could help this situation with the sheds and RVs and that sort of thing. And there are programs like the Rebuild Florida program, which is through DEO, that we've been waiting for the launch of that. So that could help some of this population. The other thing, and we've talked about this, is that there will be a certain population that the Rebuild Floridas, the HHRPs, those programs cannot assist, that they don't qualify. May it be air property, may it be, just a host of things that kind of knock them out of being able to participate in those programs. And I think that is going to be, those that are most vulnerable, and that it's the hardest for them to get out of the situation with the substandard housing. We are seeing folks that now that they have waited, almost 2.5 years post-storm, if they were able to live in their home up to this point, damage may have compounded, gotten progressively worse, and now that structure is no longer something that they can live in. And so they feel like, oh, if I could just get an RV, if I could just get a shed, then I could move in there, and that would be an upgrade from what I have now. And then, that is the tie into the workforce, is because some of these folks kind of are at their wits' end, and where they would not have even considered relocating 2 years ago, now they're starting to, consider that. And we certainly don't want to lose people, or lose our workforce. So those are the primary things. I mean, as far as what next steps could potentially be, any kind of options for people, or guidance on if they are going to try to develop some sort of housing on their own, what are the, bare bone minimum requirements that you can do? And I know you probably already have that, but how can we, work with them to kind of guide them through this process? Many of these folks probably have never built a home or anything like that. And so they don't, there's a huge education component into the processes and where to start, and just how to go through that so that it would be in compliance.
Are you finished, Ms. Christie?
Yes.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. McKinney,
No questions.
if you have a question at any time during this, just yell at me, okay?
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of questions. Rebuild Florida, what is the requirements to utilize that program?
Well, they have not yet released the requirements. We don't know. We don't have any information on how the program will work. I have reviewed some of the documents from IRMA because I've just been told that they will mimic a lot of the same kind of outline as that program, but we really don't know. Richard, with some of the programs that they're running, they noticed that the regulations or the limitations that we were expected to follow on some proposed guidelines were much different than what IRMA survivors were having to meet, and where ours were more strict. And so that's a concern for us as well. But they've released nothing on that.
Okay. You indicated there were people that were living in houses that were damaged and now they're possibly trying to get out. Do we have a number of families that we're talking about or people?
I would say, no, not off the top of my head, but I can get that for you. Many of these, they needed a roof. The leaking has gone on for, extended period of time. The damage now has, gone into the interior. There's mold issues, that sort of thing. So it's a progressive situation, but I can look in our system and I can report back with those numbers.
I would appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Thank you, Ms. Christie. At this time, Ms. Kathy Milton. Ms. Milton is a realtor with Chipola Realty.
Oh, really? Yes. Thank you for inviting me to speak. Richard Williams, I'm totally unprepared, I think, but.
No, you're fine.
I was just asked to give my opinion, and there's a couple of things, and also ask, does having less desirable homes like RVs or sheds where people are living in them, does it affect the value of the property around it? And so I questioned a lot of all of my agents that work with me, and I think everybody's in agreement that yes, of course it does. It affects the sellability of that property next to it. And it's not so much that it's the RV or the shed that's there, it's all the stuff that comes with it, the outside mess. My daughter and I rode down a road south of Marietta just a little ways, and within a mile, we saw 4 or 5 either sheds, tents, or RVs that people were living in, and terrible debris around the house. That is the kind of thing that affects the value of the other properties around that. So it makes them harder to sell. But even prior to the hurricane, there was a misconception, I think, from people from outside our area that came here to buy property that they might be able to buy a small piece of property to enjoy for, recreation or whatever, the rivers and all the natural springs and stuff that we have here. And they were hoping to be able to buy something and put an RV, and there was really no way. I think they were restricted from being able to do that. So I'm a little torn in how I feel about it, because I do feel like that with proper restrictions, ordinances, or whatever, someone should be able to enjoy their property and maybe put an RV there temporarily. But I understand the dilemma, because then how do you control, what goes on with it? So I have very mixed emotions about it. I would say that even National Association of Realtors If you pull, their website and read, about, up and coming lifestyles and trends, among young people as well as workforce, there is a demand and kind of a trend towards tiny homes, travel homes, RVs, or smaller homes. So it is something that I think we need to consider and just try to come up with some way that, you know, we could do it in a controlled manner.
Are you seeing anything where they're putting these tiny homes maybe on wheels
Yes, even on wheels, that's right.
so that they can move in and they're in a tiny home and then they decide to move, away they go?
That's
Just like a
right.
mobile,
That's right.
a small
Yeah.
RV or mobile home.
Yeah, and those tiny homes are not inexpensive, I might say.
No.
They're very expensive to own. I mean, they're not.
And again, you buy a tag from them, correct? You do not buy the, I mean, they're not fixed base.
That's right.
But I think you hit one thing that concerns all of us, and that's debris litter that a lot of times these people allow to accumulate around. So Mike, that's your job.
There's no storage, there's no, you know, place for them to put their stuff, and so they're living in very confined corners, and so they just have stuff everywhere. Couches outside.
We're
You know,
familiar
things
with
like
picking
that.
up couches and TVs and washing machines, stoves.
So if there's any questions, I mean, as far as like the value of property, you know, real estate is probably very close to, if not already at the height of, as high as it was at the height of the market back in 2008. That's prices right now. And there's a big demand and a not so much supply. So if you get a home that's priced right, we're getting multiple offers on it. So they are selling, there is a demand. But at the same time, the price of land, just raw land, we're not seeing that big of an increase on that right now, unless someone is preparing it for a home, like going in and put a well and a septic tank down. We're finding a lot of people that are dividing up their property and putting a well and septic tank and getting high dollar for those lots.
So workforce housing, in your opinion, for Jackson County, where do you think that house should fall in value? To be easily sold, not easily, but to sell.
Right. A range from 75 to 150.
75 to 150.
The houses that we're seeing the big demand for right now, or the ones that are selling really quickly, are usually 100 to 150, somewhere in there.
Okay.
That are, I mean, they've been we have had investors that have come and bought damaged homes, and then they have fixed them up, put them back on the market. And so it's like a new home by the time they get through with it, and that's what's selling quickly, ready to move into. Because if you think about it, we have not really had any, what do you call it, where a builder has gone out there and built it.
Spec homes, sub-homes.
We've not really had speculative buildings since 2006. And so really, most of the new construction you're seeing now is for people who are just building for themselves or whatever, but not the spec homes. And I talked to some of the people like Horton Homes, they're building, they had over 500 homes going up in between Gulf and Bay County right after the storm. And I talked to them about coming up here, and they said that our income level is just not gonna, you know, it's not good enough for them to come up here and invest.
Kathy, isn't there still quite a large sum of houses that were damaged by Hurricane Michael that are still sitting in some level of disrepair?
There
throughout
are.
Jackson County?
And a lot of them are homes that people, they're still living in them, just like you were saying earlier. I know a house right now that is absolutely not livable, that people are living in, and I talked to them the other day, and I think they are getting some help to finally get it. They had no insurance, that kind of thing. But there are some that people are living in. We did have a lot of investors that came and bought up homes, and that's been great. It's really been good for the community, I think, because it's improved some of these older homes, brought them back to a livable state, and people are buying them. So that's been a real help.
I think David Melvin mentioned, I may misspeak a little bit if he's listening, tell him to interrupt me, but I believe he's saying he built several spec homes here lately around behind the wharf and stuff, and they went, but the margins, I think he acquired the land years ago, so I'm sure he's embedding that cost analysis of the land and tap fees and all into that. But the margins were so thin, it's almost like, I mean, it was, I mean, you're almost breaking even. I mean,
Yeah, he's not making a lot of money, however, those homes are selling for a lot
Right.
higher than you would ever think that they would.
well, right, but if he's not making money and you're offering that as you should to other investors to come up here and buy it, again, I think that's our biggest thing, and that's something, again, this board is looking at with Hoosier Road. There's very few things the county can do. One of them is offer land for a greatly reduced rate, do away with the fees or something to initiate something, because if you tell an investor, when you're sitting, again, as Mr. Richards says, right, we call it the white gold of the coast, but in saltwater we apply too. We're so close. Investors are looking for 20 and 30% profit margins. And you come up here and you're hoping to break even after closing fees, dock stamps, all the stuff at the end of your thing. It's pushing it to where we're not, it's nothing we're, again, somebody said initiation of this meeting was nothing we're doing wrong. You're just competing with people that's got a lot more money than we do. And so, again, I think that's something we really don't have to look at. I mean, even from the 320 that we got on Hoosier Road, it's all for something to incentivize. There's profit in that you want to pay for the land. There's no impact fees. There's no building fees. You build it, they're coming. I mean, there will be people more coming to that, but we can't make it lucrative to an investor when the margins are so thin. They're probably in mid-single digits. And if anything fluctuates like lumber has now, just that, it takes that away.
That's right.
And so again, that's the complexity of this whole thing, because we're dealing with tiny homes that somebody can afford and spend 70, 80, 100,000 on a tiny home or the same equivalent in an RV, put it behind a thing, and they travel where they want to or park on their property. But they can also finance them for, you can probably walk out in an hour from an RV dealership if you got halfway decent credit and you got it. Housing, here where the engineers stand drawings, here it is with the time process and state getting involved and septic tank getting involved. I mean, it's pushing us at the same time. Real TV is pushing out their tiny homes and this new environmental stuff with solar panels and earth toilets and stuff that we have to charge them for. And they're like, well, why the bother? Especially when we're in an income base. I don't know what income is here. Average 33, 20, how much?
I think it's
39. Okay. And, you know, and that's probably gross and that's not net. So then you're looking at that. And I don't know how to over that even from an investor standpoint until we offer something that can compete marginally wise with them on a percentage basis of profit. Because again, I know that they're on 390 project. There's 6 lane and 390 from 231 to 23 Street. And I think you turn off, and I think it's right there before Bay Academy. There's 2,700 homes going in that one day. So as far as you see highways, and all you see is the green stub ups of your sewer septic hookups and your electricity power hookups. As far as you can see, they're selling like crazy. And for my beach house in Pier, close to Pier Park, there's 2,700 apartment complexes and houses being built within a 3-mile radius. I mean, again, because the margins down there are so profitable, people coming from all over the country. That's right. And I think that's something we got to look at. The land, I think the land is our one catalyst that we have, is because we have it. It was given to us free. That's right. And the impact and building fee. Just do something to get ad valorem, because once you got the ad valorem on new homes, you got that for perpetuity. Unless it gets destroyed or fire or something, that ad valorem base will be there for perpetuity. The land will then.
I agree with Richard,
Yes.
the incentive that, I think the city was involved in that. It's a grant program for the people that are getting in, that's giving them upfront money. And
Sure.
in addition to that, if you had an incentive for a builder and you had an incentive for a buyer over here, you know, that would be the ticket.
You got to have something that's going to compete with that.
I think we're on the right track
Absolutely.
with
Yeah.
our waiving the fees and the land that we have out there, you know, give the land for somebody to come build a house. And there's some other things we can do here in the county. Ms. Kathy, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any more
Yeah,
questions for Ms. Kathy? Okay. Jeff Johnson.
I can just offer you some statistics on the vacant land issues since 2015. I don't have the total numbers when last year we had 312 addresses issued, 911. 70 of those were for vacant land. Now, out of those 70, we have no way of knowing what's been developed in the last year. So But this year, since January, we've had 27 911 addresses since the beginning of this month. 10 of those are vacant, and I can see over half of these people I personally know, they're going to develop those vacant lots. So, and then we prepare this sheet every month and send it to Mike for him to have that knowledge.
Do you have a copy of that? You
I do, yeah.
I'd like to get a
Give
copy
it
of
to-
that. Yeah, that's fine.
Jeff, when someone comes
Just this year.
to your office and applies for an address,
Yes,
you GPS all of that, right?
yes,
It all gets put into the system.
you get into the map, yes.
So if the ambulance has to respond to the sheriff's department, they can punch in the GPS and go to that point.
Yes, if they're able to tell us what their physical address is, because usually they don't have a landline anymore to give us the information about that, what address they're actually at.
So if they can provide the address, you can
Hopefully.
911 can
911
GPS it.
would be able to pinpoint the X, Y, and Z and find it exactly on Earth anywhere.
Of course, you also, if people are on a cell phone, you can go right to it, can't you?
No,
Y'all don't? Y'all don't have that system?
not yet.
Okay.
That's the next phase. That's tonight at 6 o'clock. We're asking for your approval on the new, CenturyLink Lumen Master Service Agreement. to
Okay.
Get us further down the road.
Okay.
Do we,
You have anybody have questions for
well, while
Jeff?
you're here, wasn't there was a question about getting a, 911 address. I don't know where it come from. It come to this board on vacant land.
It was in Compass Lake back in 2016.
Yeah.
When we did that. That was a person that wanted a sprinkler on a garden out there that didn't want, but had to have a building built to get the sprinkler to get REA to hook it up to a building. And they can't hook it up just to a vacant
But
lot.
we couldn't get a 911
That's right.
address at that time
Well,
to
and-
get
now-
REA
can.
to do something out there. And I remember you saying if you wanted to put up a electric pole and sit out there and
watch my garden.
listen to the radio, you ought to be able to. And
Y'all made that provision.
Well, the ordinance was requiring you to build a building on something that, if I didn't want a building to get a pole, because West Florida Electric required you to hold, we had to have a building be put on our property for West Florida Electric to give you a power pole. How about if I don't want a building?
They have restrictions.
Yeah, we changed that.
we don't have no issues with that. I thought there was a discussion about it not too long ago.
There was
Yeah.
pertaining to this.
I think the discussion as it related to this was just to say that that's part of what's allowing these uninhabitable structures to make it on the property is because they're getting issued an address, they get a mailbox there. So it was more to just have the discussion of, is there a way to still give a vacant lot an address, but identify, it was just really highlighting that it is it's an unintended consequence of issuing a vacant land and address.
In trying to further along and help Mike out, we had discussed the iWorks program that the county owns or pays for. It's the community development and building department, I think, for development orders, entries and stuff. We don't have access to that database at this time, but we're working on trying to get into that. And we can enter anybody that's asking. They don't go through community development at this point to get a vacant address. They don't have to. But I think that's one way of policing it a little bit better is if we can make them go through community development. Because they're taking advantage of this at times. They can just go around community development and get a vacant address, and 2 years from now, nobody's policing it up, and they can go out there and do what they want to. As long as they-
So if you have access to the iWorks,
We don't currently, they're working on.
well, Ann, can you take care of that?
That's fair.
Thank you.
That would probably help us help my
Sure.
community development out a lot faster and be able to create a database, I guess.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Ms. Rebecca Morris Hay, property appraiser.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Chairman, Commissioners.
Afternoon. I like the mask.
Well, thank you. So, as being the property appraiser, our office, is very complex, and that there's a lot of things that we have to deal with out in the public. Our field inspectors go out and they find things that are out there as far as, our mobile homes, our portables, our RVs, everything. So as far as since the storm has come along, we have found a lot more of the portables that people are living in. And I know that the inhabitable structures are what's basically on the agenda. But as far as for our office goes, when it comes to what we have to do is what they're living in, I mean, our Constitution and our statute states what I have to do. It tells me what my guidelines are. So when someone's living in a portable building, I can assess that portable building. I do not know exactly, what y'all want to do about that, but as far as for my office, I have to go by what the statute says. As far as if it's on that ground, I have to assess.
So you place a monetary value on it.
I do.
Whether lived in or not.
Correct.
Can they claim homestead?
Yes, they can.
Which
Yes,
is gonna
they
be 25,000 and below, and then 50 up to, what is it?
25 to 50.
25
they
to
have
50
pay.
they pay, then they skip
Yep,
the 50 to 75.
correct.
And then there's some more for certain people.
Yes,
Okay.
okay, so. but
How
it's-
do you determine the value?
Well, we take all the measurements, we take the structure elements, because a lot of these portables that they are living in, they have actually went in and they have, put nice walls, they've planed out, cedar, cypress, they've got it dolled up, and they're very nice. I mean, it looks like a house. You walk in it, it's just like an apartment.
I've seen those.
Some of them.
Well, some of them
well,
do, you're
a lot
right,
of them,
yeah.
Yeah.
But then some don't have the funds.
Right.
Since the storm, a lot of them are having to live in that in order to make ends meet and have a roof over their head. So, I mean, that's where we're at as far as assessing them.
Do y'all
Yes,
document those as you're going out? Do you see the ones that are questionable? Does your field staff do that?
Yes.
Okay. And so we have can you make us a list of the ones that in that condition you talking about that's not viable for living and habitable, or what?
No.
Y'all don't do that?
No.
So y'all just basically document the ones that are, and you don't assess them. Now, they allow you in their house on some of them don't.
Some do,
Yeah.
some don't. We do not ask to go in.
Right.
But these people are proud of
Oh,
what
sure
they're
they
doing.
are.
And they want us to see it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we,
they-
like I said, we don't ask to go in. That's not what we're supposed
Sure,
to
right.
do.
So
Not in any house.
some of the nicer ones are just like tiny homes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've seen some the same way, Rebecca.
yes, sir.
Any more questions for Ms. Rebecca?
Thank you.
Mr. McKinney, I didn't hear you yell. Okay,
No, no questions. But
okay.
He said, but-
Ms. Mary Carroll, tax collector.
Well, you touched on the word that I'm here to talk about, and that's tags. What I've got to bring to the table concerning uninhabitable structures is pertaining to mobile homes and recreational vehicles, in which the law is very clear, as Rebecca, and what she does in her office as to how I am to handle this. As an agent for Florida Highway and Safety Motor Vehicles, it's very clear how I'm to tax mobile homes and RVs. They come in all shapes and sizes. And I'm going to share 3 ways. The first one is when we add it to the ad valorem tax roll. There's certain things that have to be in place for that to happen. They have to be permanently affixed to the land. The land and the mobile home or RV has got to be in the same name. And that's very important. It's got to match up, and that way it will be declared as a real property. And we issue them a RP decal. This is a black sticker that we ask them to put on their window on the mobile home, okay? And these are permanent
but they are transferable. Say if you sold your home or your RV or mobile home and land as one unit, the sticker stays with the mobile home and it gets transferred to the new owner.
What does the sticker indicate?
The sticker indicates that the land and mobile home is assessed as one unit. You own the land and you own the mobile home. So you can get homestead because it's assessed with the land, and that's what most of them are. But then the second way is, well, let me first define permanently affixed.
That was my
That's gonna
question.
be your kicker right there. Permanently affixed, according to Florida statute 193.075, paragraph 3, is when it is connected to the normal and usual utilities, and if it's tied down or is attached or affixed to such a way that it cannot be removed without material or substantial damage to the RV. Otherwise, that RV must have a license plate on it. So it's either permanently affixed to the
Does-
land.
Sewer account?
Well, if it's permanently affixed,
Well, I mean, you got the sewer line coming out, going into the septic.
it
Do
would
y'all
have the
consider that
normal
permanent?
and usual utilities attached.
Yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, if that's not the case, we would put a license plate on that RV, camper, RV, pop-up, whatever. So you would either, so far we talked about RP, putting it on, land on, assessed with the real estate tax roll. And then this one is a tag, because they can pull that off and ride it down the road and set up somewhere else. Okay, the third way is, say when you get your RV initially registered, a license plate must be issued so that it can be transported from one place to the location that's going to be, whether it's from the dealership to the home or the dealership to the campground or wherever. If or when it becomes permanently affixed to the land, and that would be rented land, not your own. So it wouldn't be anything you would get an RP sticker for. But it's not assessed with the real estate, so you wouldn't get that sticker like I just mentioned. You would get a regular mobile home decal, and those come in colors according to what year they are. So you got your RP, you're getting real estate taxes from that, and the license plate or the mobile home decal.
What's the difference in the price of the plate and the other one, the decal?
I don't have my fees with me, but say like the average
Are they
20-something.
basically equivalent?
No.
Which
Mobile
ones would,
homes are more
Yeah,
than
permanent's
RVs.
more.
Yeah,
permanent is more?
mobile homes are. And because most of mobile homes, a lot of them are double wides. They're a titled vehicle. I mean, it's titled. You transfer by means of title. You pay sales tax on it. And if it's a double wide, that means there's 2 titles. There's 2 fees. There's 2 stickers. So,
Okay.
but having said all of that, even with the stickers or license plate that we put on those that's riding around, traveling around, these come back to the county on those that are a specific length, 35 feet above. And that money goes, half of it goes to the district school board and the remainder to the Board of County Commissioners for units that are within the unincorporated areas of the county or to any municipality within such county. And for units that are located within its corporate limits, and that is with the exception, there's a $1 fee to the Florida Mobile Home Relocation Fund and a $1.50 fee to this, we're gonna tax you dollar by dollar for all these fees, but basically about $3 to $5 is all that you don't get out of the money for tax. And it's because whenever they come in the office, we have to ask the question, where is this mobile home located? And we have to put the county or city or wherever it is. So some of that money comes back to the county.
Okay.
So,
Question?
so a RV is fixed to the property. It can be on the Avalon, on taxes,
It could.
just like
yes,
a
But
house.
you're gonna tear it up if you was to pull out. It
Right,
has to
right,
go-
but I'm talking about fixed.
Yeah.
On RVs, though, RVs, all you do is really run your jack stands down, don't you? Is that considered
Yeah,
fixed?
but you could tie them down just like mobile
Yeah,
homes and they
According to
permanently
the
just.
law, it has to be to where you cannot move it unless material or substantial damage is done to the RV.
But if you leave your jack stand down and pull out with it, you'll do.
Yeah, you'll
do
the
damage.
I don't know about
Can you-
substantial, but
Can you get the difference between the tag and the sticker? And just give us an
I mean, the
idea.
RPs and the
Right.
Yeah.
RPs is nothing. I mean, they're almost free, but there's a little fee for that, but it's nothing. Because you're gonna pay your property taxes on
Based
ad
on that.
valorem.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Daniel, what?
You're gonna pay your ad valorem taxes
Yeah.
on that real
Cause
property.
it's like.
So I'm
Yeah,
wondering
house.
if the little
Like a-
sticker is free, if maybe that may be part of their incentive for going that route.
Because you're paying ad valorem taxes.
Yeah, they're gonna pay more money.
Well,
unless you're under
The 20.
if you're under 25,000, which we're only 31% of our county pays ad valorem tax,
You're right.
kind of show you
Yeah,
where we're
it's-
at.
It's not gonna add too much value because of the exemptions
Yeah.
that you're gonna get because of it.
I'm just trying to figure out why people do what they do.
Give up on that.
Oh, we'll figure it out.
Matter, you ain't gonna figure that out.
Okay, any more questions, Ms. Mary Carroll? Thank you, Mary Carroll. Okay, Ms. Christie Andresen, Tourist Development Council.
Good afternoon, board.
Good afternoon.
So touching back on taxes and selling a broken record, the main impact that these types of structures have on tourism in Jackson County is no one is easily tracked by us, but we do know it's there because there are several campers that are not in RV parks that are being used as vacation rentals, as well as some converted, basically she sheds that are being using as a vacation rental as well throughout the county. Did run a report today just to get average idea of what we're looking at. In terms of vacation rentals, we've got 34 properties listed. Some of them are legitimate, structures. Henson House lists all of their things, and then we do have a few homes that are rented out. But those 34 structures have an anticipated $115,000 in bookings over the past 60 days. While that doesn't seem like a lot, if you've got other places that are listing campers or any of these sheds that are not their own platforms such as Airbnb that remit the taxes, then those taxes are not coming back into Jackson County. It also makes it really hard for us to market vacation rentals as a place for people to stay when they are traveling because we don't know the state of those facilities. If it is a camper that is on a property that's not set up in the fashion that is required by either state statute or code, then makes it really hard for us to say that we support and encourage you to stay in a facility such as that.
So you have a list of these properties in the county.
I have a map. I don't have a list with addresses. I'll probably find them.
So I would think it would behoove us to know where they are at, especially if they're renting them out and they're renting out, if they're advertising a camper for something other than what it is, then we need to know that. So I would encourage you to try to get them identified, or a shed, because we don't want people coming here and that, oh my God, I spent all this money and I stayed in the shed. Now, if they're going hunting, hey, that's great. We love it.
Well, and there's a big difference in the tiny homes. I mean, that is a growing trend in tourism. They're building tiny homes, they're having brought into their property, they're building small cabins. There's a massive difference between those structures when they're put in place like they're supposed to be versus a shed that you pick up and convert into a tiny home for renting. But yeah, and we have campgrounds that have jumped on the glamping trend where they actually have campers there within their campground property that they rent out as a vacation rental.
and they're selling out constantly, just because it's something, you don't have to buy a camper, you get the experience of camping without having to camp outside. So it is a selling point in terms of tourism, but when it comes to looking at the safety aspect of it, obviously when it's done the right way.
Any questions for Ms. Christie? Thank you, Christie. TJ, you're up, bud.
Thank you all. Other issues notwithstanding associated with the small homes, sheds, RVs, our office really doesn't mind what the people are living in as long as the septic system or sewer system serving it is properly permitted and installed. Since the storm, we've had several complaints regarding improper sewage at sheds and RVs and things like that we've investigated, most of which are valid. And the problem is a lot of times that people want to do better, they just can't in most instances. And that's a problem that existed long before the storm also. We also permit RV parks, and as was stated before, those parks are required to have the amenities, dump stations, bathhouses, electrical hookups, those sorts of things, and they are properly permitted and inspected. But bottom line is, as far as the health department is concerned, we typically don't mind what structure it is as long as it's permitted and inspected, the septic system.
Now, I understand that in Jackson County, before you can get a building permit, you've got to have a septic tank permit. Is that correct?
Typically, the process is you have to at least apply for a septic system permit.
Okay.
What happens is there's an electrical ordinance that prevents permanent power from being connected before the approval of the septic system is given. What happens sometimes is, and that's typically, that's good for a home, or a site-built home. In a mobile home situation, typically, or an RV situation, the temporary power is the permanent power. And so there's not a real check at the end of that. So basically, we have a lot of systems that have been installed that are pending a final inspection, either on the home arriving, and a lot of times we don't ever get called back to those.
You have a question?
What's the space between the well and the septic tank?
Needs to be at least 75 feet for a new system.
You have a
Any
question?
idea as to the number of homes in Jackson County that are being lived in and are not served with a appropriate septic tank and drain field system? Any idea what that number is?
That appropriate is, I guess, kind of a relative term. As far as having no septic system at all, I couldn't even guess. We receive, the majority of the complaints that we receive are related to failing septic systems, not even so much maybe no septic systems or like more substandard septic systems or drain fields that are failing and things of that nature. But as far as a number, I couldn't even give you an educated guess.
TJ, what's the ordinance on the state level if I wanted to build a house with earth commodes in it?
There are incinerating toilets. Those options are out there. However, you do have to have a septic system to take care of the rest of the wastewater. Kitchen sink waste is actually considered black water, so it's treated the same as sewage. However, as stated earlier, laundry, bathroom sink waste, shower waste is considered gray water, and you have to have a septic system to dispose of that.
So is the size requirements on the size of the septic tank based upon now if they don't have any traditional lavatories in their bathroom, are they basing the water flow off of the kitchen as far as the black water?
There's a percentage difference. However, the majority of the wastewater produced by the homes is actually not coming from the commodes. It's laundry and those showers and things like
And
that.
they all
Yes.
consider that black water, right?
Yes, correct. But there is a percentage reduction for those individuals wanting to use incinerating toilets. And there are incinerating toilet models that are referenced in our rule that are approved for use.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Harkrider. Tyler Lupford. Ms. Christie. Wendy.
He was inadvertently detained, and I was hoping he would make it in via Zoom, but obviously he couldn't make it today.
Okay. What would you like to do from here?
I would like to thank everyone for their contributions today. I think it's very informative, so thank you all very much.
Thanks to everyone for coming. We appreciate it.
I got a couple of questions.
What-
I waited some on the end.
Stand by.
Yeah.
Mr. Hill's got
Well, I
questions.
know, I say someone to the end because I didn't want to tie up everybody's 3 minutes, but just, I mean, obviously, you know, the best of what we got in front of us is y'all and the points of opinion. But, you know, the complexity to me from a board member is how do we transition? Wendy, you might can offer this and you don't have to get up, but I think, how many homes did we do underneath the last program we got? The gentleman got the 192 home. How many homes did we totally do on that project? Was it 11 or 7 or 11 or something like that?
Are you talking about the hurricane?
Yeah, that's right, that one. Yeah, what the acronyms, yeah.
So we have 7 in progress
Right.
and 7 more
Okay.
coming out, and we're hoping to build 30 to 50.
Okay, and I think all this is based upon us getting the data of how many homes we actually need for our citizens. And I guess we can run it in tandem, hopefully we can, at the same time, workforce houses, because again, the sensitive issue to me is how do we go to someone? And I was one of them. I mean, my house was damaged by Hurricane Michael. I ended up suing my insurance company. That took almost 17 months. And just so, but if you do improvements, and if it ever went to trial, they tell you not to do much improvements to it besides the basics. Luckily it didn't, but that was some of the options. So if I did have insurance and I don't have the financial means to improve it, and you give me no other options to leave, what avenue do we put them in? I mean, and that's what I'm sensitive of, and I'm sure the board is too. So. Candy Crush over there, ain't
Was
it?
that you?
Say Candy Crush. But again, I think the overall goal is we need housing in many forms here. We need it for housing, for new job potentials, and we need housing for people that's been affected directly by Hurricane Michael. The data would probably support that when we find out that said data is how many people we need to transition into homes. I would doubt very seriously if you took a poll of said people in houses that are substandard, would you like to live in a $90,000 home if offered to you? I would probably imagine you would get north of 99.9% yes. But if they don't have the means, that we can't get the numbers of houses that, to meet that number that we don't know yet's demand, what do we do? And I think that's the complexity and the sensitivity that we have to have as far as, you know, letting them stay in there. And I agree. I don't know of anybody that would like to live in an RV. My father and mother-in-law has one, and I've stayed in a week, and you're after a while, you just get claustrophobic. So I don't see that as something that you would want as a permanent resident. And so Pate's got one in his shed. He stays in when Miss Alice gets upset with him.
I stayed in 4 times.
4 times. But again, I think that what we can maybe focus on as a group, we need data, and that's going to be a collaboration between Jeff and them and y'all and Mike and anyone that comes in and says, and Alan, that's right, Mr. Biggs, it says, hey, you're in this situation, and this house is substandard, or you're living. I saw some pictures, I believe last time we discussed this, is people on lean-tos in Compass Lake. They got tarp lean-tos, and I think there was actually some appliances, maybe a stove or something was hooked up gas underneath that for their cooking ability. Now, to what level they're at, I'm sure that they were living there, so we documented that. So again, I don't see that as something they would choose to do. So again, I would like to see if we can compile those numbers numerically and see what we can do for them. And at the same time, run the Poozer property, any other property. I think one of our greatest assets from the big boom, and from 2000 to 2008 when Neiman Marcus busted, was, I think in Rebecca's, in your office, there's about 1,000 of those, Clay, maybe yours, plotted lots that's here, subdivision that people went out there and took a road grader and split a peanut field in half with and said, I'll save the best lots you got. We have a lot of those available that's pre-approved, not to mention Compass Lake in the Hill, not to mention other places. It's pre-planned. I mean, I understand the 6344 lots that's in Compass Lake and Hill minus the 342 houses that sits on those 6,000 plus lots is pre-approved planned. I think they're already scripted for building. So I think that we got to do something with that. And Clay, again, on the tax deed stuff that we've been talking about, I think there's north of 200 of those that sit in your vaults that are basically worthless. There are people not even buying them from a public standpoint because they're not worth anything. And I think, Wendy, you mentioned also that some places the utilities are miles from the closest lot. So, I mean, you get into that situation. My point is, maybe in conjunction with everyone that's in here, and we probably need to have more of these. And I'm not saying monthly, but I'd like to see these faces again, maybe in a quarter, and give us some kind of markers in every 3 or 4 months. Where are we going with this? What data are we supporting with? What can we do I have, after, and Will Ann and the board here can attest, as many of the public, Clint and I and the rest of these commissioners here, we're putting down lime and dirt on roads right now from May of 2014. The projects are working, unless it was raining today, the projects.
It rained.
It rained. And my point is that we can't always rely on the federal government. We got to come up with very out of the box numbers because they're lagging so much because of their red tape that it's embarrassing. But that being said, I think that we need to meet at least quarterly. I mean, I wouldn't take up too much of y'all's time, but I think this kind of input that we've had today is very relative to what we're dealing with. And until we do this initial fuse of housing or programs or whatever we can do to get people to transition to something, I think that the problem persists on a longer basis. And I think with everybody involved, as y'all greatly and freely come today, I think that can be happening in a shorter term than if we just try to struggle at this and address it in a random time frame when it gets to be an issue. And as code enforcement is out there knocking on my door and, you know, and having to do what they have to do, but also we want to protect our citizens. And I guess I have one last question. This might be a Mike question. I think I heard Chris, the first speaker, Chris Rittu, that stated that the RV parks have shelters at our RV parks for them to go to in case of it. Because I know when I was chair, Hurricane Michael was coming and they were trying to find a location. The only certified place in our county besides EOC is the east wing of the Mariana High School. Are these places certified that they're talking about at RV parks? Because I can't. Okay, I was about to say, because you know, I know that there was several tornado watches that we had to address when they issued a tornado warning out. And where do you put these people? Dove's Rest, Airhead Campsite. You've got many other ones that I can't name behind Sonny's Barbecue. That's got that. What do you do with them? And I think that's going to be another part of a situation we got to address as a whole. But we live in Florida. We got rarely tornadoes, but we have a lot of hurricanes and strong winds that affect us. But
when we get our new convention center slash
yeah, that's true.
shelter completed, that will hopefully alleviate that problem. But I'm like Commissioner Hill. I thank everyone for coming in. I appreciate your input. We do have to develop a long-term strategy for dealing with this problem. As I said earlier, we're not going to solve the issue today, but at least maybe we can get all of us get on the same page, start going the same direction. But I think there's some things I would like to know when we meet again is what is an uninhabitable structure and what is unsafe? I think those are things that we're going to have to codify in order to move forward with this.
What was your second question?
Unsafe and uninhabitable. We need
Are those not already defined in the code enforcement?
Well, no, that's where it came from.
Okay.
So you tell me what it means.
I don't know. I just saw it.
I know what you've got, but it's not clear. How are you going to, who's going to do it? It's so objective. What's unsafe? What I see as unsafe, Commissioner Hill may say, man, that's a mansion. You see what I'm saying? We got to nail it down. We can't leave it open.
Well, the state law dictates that. Where am I at on persons in here? The state law, Mr. Biggs, you in the back? Yes, so the state law defines it livable inhabitants. I know that you had to have heat and running water as a basics. So what else would define that on a shortcut card? What other amenities you had to have? Obviously septic tank for waste, but there's very defined in the Florida state statute on inhabitable conditions, right?
Whether it's a house or whether it's a $350,000 residence.
Sure.
They all have to be built before the building.
Right.
There's a wind zone, you just spent 140. So
North of in here in our zones 140 now? Oh wow, I didn't know that.
From 130 to 140 miles a time. And basically any structure that is built that is called what we call habitable.
Sure.
Has to follow that funding to Florida Building Code. Sure. And also in that wind zone distance.
Yeah.
But you and I know, if you go look at any house, probably my house, and you know you're familiar with my house, it probably does not meet the Florida Building Code today.
But you're exempt though, but you would be exempt. You're talking about new construction though. Everything's grandfathered in. Because 140 is gonna push your cost of building that 140 up a while. Like,
You read the statute, it says it's gotta meet the Florida building code.
yeah,
So your house
If
would
you're-
not meet the Florida building.
no, it would. Not at 140 mile. I know house, very few houses in James County will. When did that go up, Mr. Biggs? I know the beaches went up on the coastal
It went up, the
first this year.
But those are some issues that I think we need to
Thank
take
you,
a
Mr.
look at and get nailed down before we get too far into this.
Well, you know, I
Because
think that the overall,
peeling paint is one of the things that makes a building uninhabitable.
I think the overall goal, and I agree with Eric, there's probably some additional information and numbers that we need to get to it, but I think the overall goal is to either, you know, as far as helping Mike out with enforcement, is either we need to change the rules to allow those places to remain in place as they are, or we need to start enforcing the regulations that we have in place, one of the two. I think everybody would agree with that.
And I agree 100%. My only question to that was, if you give Mike the authority to do it and enforce it, they're in that condition for a reason. And if we don't have they don't have their own mechanism to get out of that hole in the ditch, and we force them to say, you gotta get out. I mean, unless we throw them a shovel or a backhoe or something, they're stuck there in that, I mean, they'll be homeless at that point. You leave
It's a
Yeah,
tough-
we're definitely going to have to come up with,
Go ahead, Mr. McKinney.
we definitely going to have to come up with some alternative, especially when we put mandates on them to come out, to get out the residence or improve it. We want to have some kind of mechanism to, in place to make sure that they are able to do better.
That's right.
Well, I think we all want to make sure that everyone's living in a good, sound, strong home. But we have to come up with some mechanism for that family or couple or whatever that's living under the tarp and using the pallets for walls. How do we help them? Where do we send that group? How do we deal with them? And they will never qualify for Wendy's program. They just can't do it. So what do we do? So those are the questions we are going to have to solve. And I mean, sending Mike out to knock on doors, that's easy. But do we really want to kick these people out on the street when they have nothing? I think we'll be a better county if we can develop a program that will help those people get out of that situation, and that will help all of us, you know, to include the tourism and the economy.
Yeah, there's another thing. I had a chance to fly to Colorado with Bill Stant and his staff, and some back in, I think, spring of 15, the air base out there was teaching cadets. And one thing they did, and this is Colorado Springs we were in, was to facilitate abandoned hotel rooms. And there was a place that had one that was maybe 80 to 100, and that it was used and had been sold. So it wasn't dilapidated. It just was transitioned, didn't sell for bankruptcy issues, whatever, if I understood the analogy right. But it was sub 90 rooms in it. Now they met all the criteria. They met the little small kitchenette little area they had in there. They met a room, everything that you would have in a hotel room. And so I mean, again, I'm not saying this, but I do know when they were looking at one of the potentials of coming here in that year was the hotels across from Firehouse Lock and Key, the old Holiday Inn, I still call it. That one was not in use at that time. And that was one of the places we looked at maybe buying from the TDC. I might have the acronyms wrong. What was Bill's JCDC? JCDC. I get all them alphabet soup messed up. But they were looking at possibly acquiring that if we won said contract for those cadets. Now that sounds like a stretch, but I don't think we have any hotels right now that's not in use. But I know the one at Grand Ridge exit was vacant for years that Pete Durden owned. That might be something in the future you look at. I'm not saying for permanent, but if you had 90 rooms available to you or 60 rooms available to you on a short-term thing to transition people in if they have to leave, that might be a viable option. So anyway,
I think
we can talk.
Richard, we may be able to work something out with the Florida Housing Corporation, some programs. But I think it is a problem, and we realize it, and we're going to work on that.
Yep.
I appreciate everyone coming. Now, let's move forward. Where are we?
Jim, does anybody else have something
Do y'all have anything you want to say?
that hasn't spoken?
Is there anyone on Zoom or whatever that wants to talk?
Thank y'all so much. Appreciate y'all.
thanks Willian and staff for bringing all these people together, because this is the first time we ever had something like this that I know of.
Yeah, so.
Very informative.
Whenever we got together to plan for this meeting, became evident pretty quickly that this is a much larger issue than just the ordinances. There's a lot of people and different organizations that this problem touches. So it was very helpful. In this first agenda item, as Wendy mentioned, there's an application attached for an accessory structure. And also an affidavit. So we've been talking a lot about that this is a multifaceted issue. And so not really necessarily asking y'all to take action on it today, but wanted to go over it with you, that the thought here being that this would be a mechanism to try to catch on the front end where we don't create a problem. So someone comes in, they apply for a shed, they acknowledge on the front end that they're not going to live in it. That's not going to help the people who get the shed on there without a development order. But it sort of puts them on notice on the front end to try to alleviate for people who may pull it on there not knowing that they can't live in it. And then they turn it into, a living quarter. So that's just something for y'all to
So
read.
is this a fee attached to this thing?
This is just, they have to get this anyway for residential development order.
They are
This is-
supposed to.
They're supposed to. So this would just be making it a standalone application so that when staff gets it, they say, it sort of pulls it out from the pack and it just getting wrapped up into like a house. It's accessory structure, it's different. And then the person would actually sign, I'm acknowledging I'm not going to live in this shed unless I bring it up to Florida Building Code. So that's just more of a proactive measure that does not help us where we are today, but it's a way to try to stop some of it from happening.
That might have, if you sign something that you're not gonna do it, that might keep you from doing it a little.
Yeah, a little bit.
Or it would help you say, well, wait a minute, I do want to live in it. What do I need to do to live
Right,
in it?
and that was a question.
And the caveat you put in there, you got to bring it up to Florida Building.
Right.
How hard, Paul, is that to do that? Because I know that I understand now that you can actually bring a pole barn to state standards with the cross brace and the metal building. How about these?
Supplemental. I'm not familiar enough with these accessory structures to know. I know some of them would be fairly easy to bring up to code, and some of them.
And the reason I mention that is that we might want to look at that. Some people, I mean, I don't know, yeah, Mr. Allen, yeah. Some people, if y'all watch, again, it's a trend going around, I'm even considering it, a barnuminium. If you even once saw those, there's a guy, Eric Cortez or something, that's in Texas, got a huge channel, like 1 million people follow it, and he builds these barnuminiums. It's a barn, it's some of them 15,000, 30,000 square foot mansions. Inside the barn is wrapped with regular roofing on the outside, but it's also very structural. But I know we get a lot of questions sometime on, there's one in Sneeze on Eugenia Street. Now it's not a pole barn, but it's the ones, the sheds you can pull up on a rollback, the wood that use T111 on the sides, like the wood. Now they have an issue with that. That's something they're having to deal with, but is there a way to bring those to state standards? I mean, all it needs is an architectural stamp, which means it's met the codes based upon Florida, right? A lot of it's strapping, right?
When you get the pole barn is already engineered.
Right. But without walls, wind loads, that's
So
right.
Wind in, wind
And out, yeah.
But when you start putting up
Walls, right.
then you have a different area that it falls into, and you have to actually get those plans engineered. And so I had them in my office the other day, and we were talking about the difference between just building a regular stick-built house and taking a pole barn, having to have it engineered. And also, too, when you sell these homes, this is one of the areas that people have to look at, is that when you sell one of these pole barns converted into a house, you have to list, and the owner that's buying the house has to be aware that it is a pole barn converted into a house.
Okay.
And that has sometimes a negative effect on the buyer, because I don't want a pole barn built a house.
Right.
Versus, okay, we've got a monolithic slab here, stick frame house, things of that nature. But they can be, but they have to be engineered, because the truss system, the sake of the truss system,
right,
is not rated for the live or dead load of the ceiling.
Right.
And so.
I just wonder, because that's the information I think the average person would see, because even pole barns becoming very inhabitable. I know I can name you about 3 in Calhoun County right now that's got
Right.
Peckles cypress on the sides and marble flooring, and probably the kitchen costs more than my house. But, but my point is if these people that's going to buy these, I think some of those little T111 sheds, I call them, are, they're $15,000. If that person knew that, hey, I could spend $5,000 more and that thing would be certified to live in. I might only want a fixed tiny house. I just wonder if that information, I don't know the cost analysis between getting them to be a storage shed to a living conditions on a mass scale could be transitioned to where they had that knowledge. I'd spend $5,000 more to make it mass state code and 140-mile wind load would be an investment to me if I was looking at that initial investment to start with.
Yeah, the strapping and all of that, and most of them, they got that T111 on the
That's right.
outside. And Don knows this, because he in here building their drawings, you have to have that secondary water intrusion.
Right.
So in order to have that, either you've got to wrap the T111 and then go ahead and put some vinyl siding on the outside of it. But the biggest thing, I say biggest thing, is that it has to be either on a monolithic slab, anchored down, or either a pier. If it's
Right.
on piers, then the piers have to be designed by the engineer. So they have to be able to be designed to hold that house
Right.
with the current wind load and things. But there's a lot of strapping that has to be going on. And plus there are minimum sizes of rooms, minimum sizes of bathrooms, minimum sizes of the kitchen, and,
Windows.
of course, your
Window
plumbing
egresses, yeah.
and your electrical, and, most of the roof systems, truss systems, they're not
Conditions,
ready.
you have to have bathrooms.
Insulation has to be certain levels as well.
It does, and, but, you can get them because there are some that are made into tiny homes. They got the label on the inside of them. The labels is S1 or S2. That means shed. And you've got ones that's called R1 or R2. And those actually, from the factory, have been built to Florida building codes. And they are very easily turned into a tiny home because the strapping and all that stuff was taken into account when it's being built.
Could you price me one, the equivalent size from a S1 or S2 to an R1 and R2? Because to me, that would be an awesome public PSA to put out from Jackson County. That listen, if you're going to live in one of these, save us and use a headache. And this is a difference of the cost analysis roughly per square foot. And make sure you look for the R1, R2, and make sure it's done right. We want you to come here if you were to decide to live in that, but we want you to live in safe conditions, health-wise and all. And it just seemed to me like if we knew that, again, that small other investment, a little bit of a monetary investment would be, because some of the sheds, I'm thinking, like I said, $10,000, $15,000. If you get 400 or 500 square foot, maybe not quite that much, 350, whatever, and you're paying 15 for it, I mean, I would pay, again, 2022 to have a fixed site and have it to where it's livable conditions and things. So, I mean, that's just something we need to look at, because I think the price of a buyer is just going there and saying, I want that one. Some rollback comes there, picks it up and drops on the property with some blocks, and they can't live in it, but they are. But if they knew, hey, if I could finance, and you can finance these things for like 10 years. I mean, they all kind of selling those old standard sheds. If they could finance it for that long and pay a little bit more, I'm sure they would choose the second option. At least I would. So.
I just had something to add to that. That's what I was talking about a little earlier, is if we could provide them with some sort of guidelines so that they would know, what's the bare minimum that we can get away with. But also to take that a step further, if we could share what those requirements are with the folks that are selling these, and say, listen, if somebody comes in and wants to buy these, these are the minimum requirements for the county if they want to live in it. And potentially some of those sellers could, have an add-on service that they help them convert them, or they do something on their side. So there might be a solution there, but again, it's that education to let people know, don't go and spend your money on something that's not convertible.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're doing is when they go up there to build, go up there to get one of these storage sheds, they're actually being told that they can live in it.
Oh, Oh, right, you're right. That's what happened. I'm thinking, that's right. But all they want is sales, so they can care less. You ain't gonna sue them for lying to you. Oops, I'm sorry, you misinterpreted what I said. I mean, so I think if we get that information out there too.
I think you're onto something there, Commissioner Hill. We do need to push that information out. And wherever where most of them go to buy them, Dothan.
They sell them in Sneed's, I know that,
I
on the
know.
other side of the road.
Chipley and Mariana.
Chipley, Mariana.
Hot milk.
But,
Not them.
We may want to get with the distributors and,
offer, at least they'll,
Educate
that's
them.
what they'll offer them. I mean,
Yeah.
offer the R1, R2.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, if they're
Okay.
financing stuff.
all right, let's move on right along. I guess the next thing we got,
I was just going to, Wendy, if you want to review the next item? Sure.
So Commissioners, what we have is a draft ordinance for RVs. And I have some information from other counties as well. Bear with me.
There's that house.
mhm.
She lives on page 15.
And this is actually for your review. We're not expecting answers today. And so we just like for you all to review the drafted ordinance. I'm sure you will have questions about it. And we're open for your recommendations. And at the same time, you can see these tables. The first one is uninhabitable structures and what other local counties are doing with their ordinances. And then the other is those that allow RVs for permanent housing or temporary housing on the backside.
Mhm.
And I believe we can come back at another date and time. I have plenty more if you all need them.
Yeah, well, I think we need some more.
Okay.
I got a question.
I took his, he shouldn't have laid it
Yeah,
to the
on
side.
page 25. Section 74. Minimum lot size says, use of RVs for residential purposes is discouraged but not prohibited on lots of less than 1/2 acre in size.
That's to do with well and septic.
Mhm.
Not prohibited on lots of less than 1/2 acre. What about, are they prohibited on lots larger than 1/2 acre?
Yeah, he's saying they're discouraged but prohibited on 1/2 acre or less.
1/2 acre or
They
less.
better, they're all right for 1/2 acre and larger. Is that what you're saying?
Use of RV for less than 1/2 acre in size will require a special regulation. I got a 1 acre lot. Can I put my RV on it?
Got a well and septic
Can't do
tank?
it according
As
to
long as
that.
you can get a well and a septic on there. It's saying
We
that
can on a 1/2 acre.
It's
it's
less than
prohibited
a
on
1/2
less
acre.
than half of an
Prohibited.
acre, but that would mean it's okay.
What I'm telling
above
you
it.
is, it is not addressing anything over a 1/2 acre. Your regulation's not saying,
You're not specifically stating that it's
Sure.
okay.
I
you
understand.
need to be clear on that.
Right.
Yes,
Well, because it's just addressing the minimum lot size.
Less than a half, you gotta get.
but you got to tell them
So-
they can go larger.
So how we could spell that out in here, but this would be actually dictated by our future land use map. So Ag 2 is one dwelling unit per
Per
acre,
acre.
et cetera. But we can make a reference to, the future land use code will be abided by, or some reference to that.
We're still, when you drop down 74, paragraph 1, says a recreational vehicle, shall be totally screened. I thought we
So
threw that out 2
let-
years ago.
Let me speak to this. This was the last ordinance brought before y'all about 2 years ago that no action was taken on at all. So we're not saying to do this. We're saying this was the last thing that was before y'all.
Why
So
was it
just-
no action taken? That we didn't
I
agree
don't
with
know,
it?
y'all just stared at me while I was at the microphone.
Well, we don't
Because
probably
there's a
restart
lot of
it.
things in
Away.
there.
3 times.
Yeah, it was really painful. So we're bringing it back for your
The same way?
discussion and
What's
for
changed?
you to say what you want changed.
Well, what did we want changed in? We didn't even, say. Did we indicate
Well,
what
the
it was?
screen from view was the main topic I remember being an issue.
The what?
The
Screen
argument
from view.
was, or the discussion was, if I have 40 acres, why do I have to put up a screen?
You talking about,
So-
you talking about skirting around the bottom?
Yeah.
No.
To obscure the
No.
RV. It's
Screen
not
is-
skirting.
Do what?
So this is referring to screen, this says screen
Plant some
from
pine trees
view.
around
Oh,
the front.
no.
You
Whether
gotta
a
have,
fence,
you gotta have
bushes.
bushes or fabric or something. So I can't see yours from my, on
You
your
can't
40
see
and
my
my 80.
stuff on my 40 that
That-
landed
yeah.
on.
That's where we were at, and we said.
It
We'll give you the
Get it.
same look if that comes back up like that. Bet
Yeah.
Well,
that.
that's why we're bringing it
And you brought it
today
in.
for your discussion and get feedback on.
Now, we may want to talk about doing something in a platted neighborhood where, and this is, remember Commissioner Lockie brought that up? That was his thing, in neighborhoods.
Well, it was out there at the Oaks. That was our last issue, if I remember right. I don't know who handled that. That-
Indian
So-
Springs is one.
I would actually recommend that you not allow an RV in a platted subdivision because of that issue right there. You have
You're going,
Oh, wait,
where
wait,
am I
wait,
going
wait.
to store mine?
Yeah,
RV.
that's what
No,
I'm
no,
saying.
store it.
living in it,
Oh,
not
living.
storing.
I'm about
So
to
if
say,
I come to visit grandma and I got my RV, I can't stay in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen here, I ain't getting shot by no redneck over that. I say that right now. Yeah, that's where that would be
That's
going
in a
quick.
minute.
I think you can't have it both ways.
Oh, we can.
Yeah, we can.
You really can't. You can't allow RVs to have no rules and you can do whatever you want because it's your property and be able to get that call from your constituent that says, I have a platted subdivision, I paid $300,000 for my house, and Joe next door has an RV living in it. We cannot have both of those.
Permanently, maybe you do need a screen there and permanently.
That's all
But if you
we're
just
trying
go
to
see
get is
grandma
some
and you stay there for a
parameters.
little while, no.
You gotta account for people visiting grandma.
I don't think anyone's gonna complain over someone visiting grandma.
Never
I
know.
think what they're
Well,
gonna
if you
complain
don't put
over.
it in here, then
So then in
somebody can
that
come
way,
along
you
and do
say
it.
an RV can be allowed on property for X number of days per
for
year.
7 days.
Or move it, like you already
Right.
park at
You can-
Interstate Park. You can only stay in that lot 2 weeks. And you go down and move to the next lot in 2 weeks, but you can't stay in that for 2 weeks. I mean, there maybe has to be a timeline, but
I don't know about the
The,
timeline. I
the
think,
ordinances for Compass Lake and Hills do limit, I believe it's 7 days in a year.
I got a quick question on that since you mentioned it. Is there still, is the POA still active down there?
As
It
a
is?
company,
As
you're
a company, okay. I just didn't know about the guidelines. Is the guidelines since that went away was?
The guidelines are in our ordinance.
Oh, in your ordinances.
Which will be something we have to address
Yeah,
at some
okay.
point.
Okay, no, that just,
those are,
So what I'm hearing is we don't want to screen from view when we're just out in the country,
Out in the-
unincorporated.
out
We
in
do want to put
rural,
parameters
unincorporated.
on subdivisions. I think all of y'all said that.
I will
You
take a
want
look.
grandma to visit.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
And it may just simply be that rather than stating a date that, you're visiting, I don't know how you would write it.
but you had to be able to defend it in court, 'cause that's where it ended up being.
Yeah,
So you'd had to have it in some type of like, because someone's gonna get somebody up in one of those nice neighborhoods that's got a little bit of money on the speed dial to an attorney and say, listen here, this has happened here. They let the other one do it that way. I mean, there had to be that consistency, but now how to formulate that, I don't know.
Change the ordinance and say you can have
Y'all-
one anywhere.
did you read this?
That's-
Yeah.
Well,
No,
no,
you
I
didn't.
didn't. I didn't read it
What
all.
page are you on?
I'm on 26,
So what,
section 70.
what I would say on this was truly for y'all to give some feedback, read it, take it with you, think on it. We can meet one-on-one. The whole goal here is, again, another part of this problem that we have. It's just a small piece of it. But we currently say we don't allow RVs in Jackson County in our ordinance. but that's not true. They're everywhere. We
So why
allow.
are we saying that? Who's saying that we say
We
that?
just didn't change.
No, we literally say that in our ordinance.
We hadn't
They're
changed it.
prohibited.
Okay,
No,
but we
we
allow
For us.
They're exempted right now because of, for hurricane
till the end
damage.
of this year.
So,
Right.
okay, till the end
And
of this year.
only for those in recovery.
Right. So what we're trying to say is, we don't, I mean, I do care, but we're not about what we do. We just want to know we're enforcing what we actually have.
So if I'm building a house and I'm coming from here, I can't stay in an RV on my property while I build my house?
Not according to your code
That's
today.
crazy. Free. I just say that
Can we
right up
change
front.
that today?
I thought we had changed it, but
I know.
But that is the kind of feedback we need if there's a desire to allow for RV while you're constructing. So some counties have that, and you just have to have an active building permit to be able to live on
So that'd
that
be
lot
fine.
while you're building.
let's go on and then we'll come back to that.
And you can see on these, what other counties are doing as well.
Okay. You're set on page 26, section 74, temporary residence. A certificate of occupancy will not be issued unless the temporary connection or the recreational vehicle is removed.
Yes,
Look who showed up.
Apostle John.
So that covers.
What about the lapse time? Okay, Mr. Biggs, this is probably your question.
Yes, sir.
So, I've applied for a building permit, I'm building my house, and you come out and you say, I'm living in an RV. Nope, ain't gonna give you a occupational permit because your RV is still hooked up. What do I do from the time you come out there until I get the certificate of occupancy?
Fairfield Inn.
How long is it gonna take you to tell me I can move in?
Once we do the final on the house,
Uh-huh.
I call the NAIC and say that it's passed. The homeowner can come up that day and get the order of occupancy, and they can start moving in that day.
Okay, even though I still got my RV hooked up?
That's a pause.
Yeah, go ahead and say it.
When you read it,
Yeah.
that's what, you see what I'm saying?
This is a draft.
Yeah, so,
Well, I know it's a draft,
Yeah,
but
he's
let's get
already,
it
he's
right.
already butchered it up over here with his red pen, I tell you that.
yeah, but just to take you through the thought process behind this is for a temporary residence, the whole point in allowing that RV is while they construct something. So therefore, if that's the goal, you don't want them stayed hooked into the septic tank because let's say it's a 1 acre lot on Ag 2 land, that's 1 per 1. That's 1 dwelling unit per acre. They, according to your comprehensive plan, can't have 2 units on that site. So that would defeat the whole purpose by saying, well, you can just still stay connected in. Now, what they do once you drive away, obviously, we're not going to be out there
So
checking
we already
that.
changed it, so we can
Well,
change
you
the
need to
comprehensive
take care of that.
plan and just do it where you can do 2 per acre on Ag 2. Why?
That.
You got,
What
you
about
got,
the
you got,
granny
you got, well, you got enough space on there on 200-foot square to put 75 foot between 2 wells and septic tanks.
Yeah,
Seem like you adamantly-
that is 60% of your land mass in Jackson County is in Ag 2, which would require a major amendment through the state of Florida. And Jackson County is the only county in Florida that has that low density, and we had to fight
What's
to
wrong
get
with
it.
it? I know, but what's wrong with it?
Well, I'm not saying there is anything wrong with it. I'm just saying there is no other county that has 1 per 1 as much as we do. They have
Well, I
5
mean,
to 1, 20 to 1.
Well, according to that one in Sinai we're dealing with right now, he bought 8 acres and can't, doesn't it have, 4 acres, it has to be 1 to 8?
Still dealing with that?
Yes, we still dealing with
Oh,
that.
my God.
1 to 8.
Or whatever it was, that.
1 to 20?
Not, no, 1 to 20, excuse me.
But we changed that. Or I mean, the public hearing is set to change
Okay,
that
haven't
one.
changed yet, though. Right. Maybe
I just picked up on the time lapse. That needs to be corrected. Then the next thing I see is the last paragraph, recreational vehicles used for temporary residence shall be fully licensed and ready for highway usage and can be no more than 180 days. Most people who are going to build a house can't build it in 6 months. You can't do it.
But if they
Now, a
got,
contractor can.
but if they
He'll
got,
do it
a-
in about 9 months.
if they got an RV, they got it licensed to be on the road, so it's fine.
No,
Not on the property though.
180 days,
That's still temporary.
180 days
This
is
is
all they
just
got.
for a situation that's tied into the septic tank that came in and said, I want to live here until I build my house. And it says extensions past 180 will be considered on individual
So you
circumstances.
just go in and apply for an extension and you just prove that your house is still under construction
Right.
and get an extension.
Why make
Or-
them do that? I'm telling you, 6 months is not reasonable.
Why don't you just change it to 1 year?
Well, you
I
could.
would, that's
I
what
mean,
I
make it
would.
easy.
I think the idea there is to encourage that building process to move along, but there's
I assure you, somebody's got construction insurance and construction note, they don't very well encourage it, especially if you got a wife and RV with them. And that house is a lot more palatable to them than an RV.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I would recommend we change it to 1 year.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'd rather give them more time than less time.
okay.
So you
And
want.
don't even ask my wife how long it took me to build my house.
you
So
probably
I would
should.
say y'all read this and get with me individually, or, if you have a specific comment or anything, we will share that all here again when we're together.
When we're
again.
talking, when we're talking about the time frame on this to revisit it.
Well, you
Well-
said you wanted to revisit all of this every quarter.
Well, yeah, I was talking about a quarter, but I mean, we're
Yeah, I
gonna wait
was
a
thinking
quarter.
of bringing this back in February sometime
Oh,
for
okay.
actual
We'll review it.
I know we're supposed to look at, but on that last page, it says no recreation vehicles shall be allowed permanent residence in Compass Lake in the Hills. I know, but do we need to get in there saying that? Shouldn't we say something about the POA? It's up to the POA. We don't need to get in Compass Lake's business.
I think it's just quoting what's
deed?
already in our ordinance act.
Is
Well,
it
still, I
a
don't-
deed restriction?
Still, I don't.
Or is it
know
our
that we
county
need to get
ordinance that
involved in
dictates
each
that?
little old community.
We have
It's
it
in
in
our ordinance.
We have an adopted section just for Compass Lake and Hills in our county ordinances. I believe
Yeah,
that was
but
just
don't,
quoting that.
But we're not
in
in
view of
that
the fact that,
agreement no more.
yeah, we're not, do we really want?
Right, but are you gonna call out every community that?
They have an active body. A city or a town has their own board that handles it.
So
City and
we
Springs?
should say, or any platted subdivision.
Yeah, or POA or whatever.
Yeah, something
Right.
cool.
But
That was
Compass
just
Lake was
suggestion.
spelled out in this because they already have ordinances.
Do we have any more?
Any more ones?
Any more
Platted.
places?
Not with the
Oh,
ordinance.
no, we have a ton of platted subdivisions. That's just the only one that is specifically in our
I was
ordinance.
just wondering if that, we really should
Yeah.
call that out.
But it was probably put in the ordinance because of the relationship the county, the board had with the BOA, which we no longer have.
So I would recommend that you put it in here until such time, if you decide to visit that Compass Lake, then at both times I would remove it. And the reason for that is, if I'm brand new to community development, reviewing something and I'm reviewing an RV, you don't want them to have to search through ordinances. You would want that to be specifically there for ease of reviewing something.
Yeah, but
Yeah, that's fine.
we're more, I mean, we're treating Compass Lake like we treat Neal's Landing. It's Jackson County unincorporated.
Yeah, but
When
they
you
had,
change your ordinance, that will be true, but today Compass Lake is special in the ordinances.
I think we need to look at changing the ordinance.
we'll look at it.
Well, I think you'll find a lot of people move out there because they did have restrictions.
Well,
That's
that's
what
fine.
they wanted.
But,
Yeah.
but we're not putting that
Okay.
restriction. They're putting that restriction.
Who's they?
Compass Lake and Hills.
No, these ordinances were drafted up for that platted subdivision for the
Yeah,
county.
right. Oh, okay. Just something to think about.
It is something that needs to be discussed in
Okay.
light of the change with the MSTU and everything.
All right, are we finished with that? We beat that dead horse. All right, page 27. Ms. Willan?
Actually, oh, yes, I was going to update you all. So I don't know if we actually discussed this in the board meeting, but Commissioner Hill and I've had many discussions about this idea of a concierge service for our community development department. And so the idea for this stems from a county in South Florida that developed a program. It's called a platinum permitting process, and a part of that is a concierge. And the idea being that when someone comes into community development, they're either building a house or starting a business, but they're not familiar with the process, especially maybe in Jackson County, that they would be assigned a person that walks them through that process, not only necessarily just our office, but environmental health, helps coordinate that entire process for them. So in speaking with Brevard County, they don't actually have a permanent full-time person that does that. They create the program internally, and then someone sort of wears that hat when they identify the need. So what I'd like to propose is that we task community development with developing that program, going ahead and identifying someone in community development that would serve in that capacity to develop it, get it going. And then in budget time, if we see the need to actually have a part-time or full-time person, we can address that then. But instead of jumping out there and creating a position before it's even developed, let someone in-house develop it and start serving in that capacity.
Having developed projects throughout North Florida, I will say that working with community development here is a pretty easy process compared to, say, Leon County, Bay County, and other places. But anything I think that we can do to help, make that process smoother, will certainly, should encourage development and should build goodwill between government and private developers. I think it's a good idea.
Well, I just think that from the basics of it, when you have a person that's going out and you're getting SBA loans, they get a traditional loan from an institution for whatever means they have available to them, $150,000, $200,000, and they walk into a door and they have never done this before. And the process is, I always look at like a Cadillac dealership, no matter who you are, you walk on that lot, somebody's coming to you. You better be careful, they may come to you if you're walking by on the sidewalk. It has to be a system that person knows that you're there to, if there's a different color Cadillac you want or brand new truck, whatever it is, they're looking for search engines to find that for. They're there to make sure that process works smoothly. And even to come down, and Will Ann knows about this and some of the other ones, I found out the other day, there's about a $500,000 house built on Gulf Power Road. And I've been down that road my entire life, and this house sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, there's $30,000 block homes and a little small 2-story stick frame home. And then there's this, and I didn't even know it was there. It's kind of stuck up a little. And the lady was so humble to come up and trying to she had to worry about trying to get a drainage ditch permit. She didn't know where to go, what to do. And I'm like, you through this process, and it's just, again, it's just small things that to us is probably, we know, all right, go here to community. The general public doesn't know. And they shouldn't have to worry about small stuff like that. And to the point that we're going to try to change maybe some of the IT stuff, Joseph's not in here, that these people don't have to leave Gulf Power Road to drive to community development or road and bridge in this case to fill out a piece of paper. They should be able to have a printable form that when it's sent to them and what they need, they fill out the blanks and they submit it, and it's received via computer on the thing. Something just basic like that just, the lady called me, had not a clue what to do. And I just think that's kind of asinine that we have someone investing that much money in our county and will profit very well off ad valorem on that size house and have not it be streamlined. So
Mr. Chair, what you're recommending is that we just authorize community to develop the details of the program. And you feel like this can be done without hiring another person, but with personnel currently?
I think at this point, until we can get a feel for how often it's being utilized, and also just having an internal person that already knows a good bit of the process, I'll be asking them to, of course, branch out into learning more of the process.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to grant the request for community development to develop the program.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Pate, seconded by Commissioner Hill. Any more discussion? Commissioner McKinney, can you hear me?
Yes. I hear you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McKinney, when you vote, just say aye, and the rest of you will.
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner McKinney's for it. We got 5 for it. Thank
Okay.
you. Next.
Okay, Carlin?
During the last special meeting, the board advised that they wanted research to be done on the impacts of a waived building fee for new residential properties. We pulled 5 years of expenditures to show the overall cost to support the operational services provided by the building department to include salary, benefits, contracted services, communications, and et cetera. We also pulled 5 years of revenue information. And in the past, noted that the revenue at sometimes was not sufficient to support expenditures of the building department, and that was made whole with general revenue. As a direct impact from the storm, there was an increase in revenues in fiscal year 2019-20, even with the building and inspection fees being temporarily waived for Hurricane Michael. Based on this analysis of the data, it is clear that except for 2019-20, there has not been a historically significant surplus of revenue generated, and therefore we would like the board to consider the following. Board's consideration of implementing a trial period of 6 months for a waived fee for new residential construction, which would exclude commercial. During this time, expenditures and revenue will be closely monitored to ensure that there are not significant impacts to the building department. This would then be discussed during the budget planning period for fiscal year 21-22 to make further decisions related to the longevity of this plan.
Ms. Carlin, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This is new residential. What about remodels?
We'll look at that at this point.
I don't,
I mean,
that was
probably
not
something we
the
need to.
original directive. We could look and see what that impact would be, but I think at this point, we're going to feel the most benefit from new
Let me
residential
ask
builds.
Mr. Biggs, are you seeing a lot of big remodeling?
Especially some of these investors that are coming and buying these, homes that are shabby, remodeling, tearing them down.
Well, do we want to add remodels to it?
Be more of an impact.
I can't make a motion.
Well, I know,
No, I
but
didn't-
you asked the question.
I asked the
don't have
question.
So the directive, though, we can
I
definitely
know what
change
the
that.
directive was.
Well, I wanted to also comment on commercial, because I made a note. So we're handling commercial through the incentive package. So just, that was not to say.
Is that for all commercial buildings? The impact?
Well, if they meet the incentive
Incentive that
package,
we
if they
got.
meet those criteria, then it can. But the residential, we only analyze new builds. But, you know, we can always throw a remodel or bring back another analysis on what that would look like.
Do we want to do both, or we want to wait and let them bring that back? I mean, do this, but wait and let them bring that back.
I
Or
would
do
think
we
we
do
might as well do
both?
both at one time. Mr. Biggs is going to be paid.
I make a motion that we do the 6 month trial on the new homes and the remodeling.
Second.
Just a question, would it be worthwhile to consider doing it a year instead of 180 days?
We have the budget coming up in July,
Okay, so
which would be a good time for us to review this. And 6 months is not going to kill us, but I understand what you're saying.
Good litmus
It may
on good
take
stuff.
6 months for the word to get out.
So that brings up a good point. We probably need to advertise that. I would do our best to get some PSAs around just to let people know. And I wouldn't do it in just Jackson County. I
Oh,
mean,
no.
I'd advertise.
Bay County, everywhere
I
gets
mean,
it.
where there's a PSA announcement, you can do that.
Leon County. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Pate to waive the fees for new construction and remodel for 6 months. We'll review it in that budget, and second by Commissioner Hill. Is there any more discussion? Okay, Commissioner McKinney, you can vote by saying aye.
Yes.
No, okay, he's for it. Everybody else, we're all for it. All five, motion passes. Okay. Is that all you have, Ms. Carlin? Ms. Willan?
I do have one more thing. So at the last meeting, Commissioner Hill brought up about the Endeavor property and the gas station. And so I did reach out to Mr. Evan Rosenthal at Neighbors Giblin and just got some feedback on how we should go about something like this. And so he provided guidance that, you know, the board, there is a path to do this through section 125.045, which I know Michelle had referenced, but Evan's been helping us on other items with Endeavor. So he says that he would recommend the board adopt a resolution making findings regarding the economic development purpose and any other public purposes served by the project, and setting relevant requirements such as related to the number of jobs to be created, wage requirements, construction timeline, etc. And those can be whatever parameters the board chooses to set. These requirements would also then be incorporated in the conveyance documents down the line so that the property would revert back to the county if the developer did not follow through. So what I would recommend is that you all give me time to work with Evan to develop a resolution. And then he can also prepare a document, if you all decide to do that for the gas station, for instance, that would be in compliance with the resolution.
I think the document that is going to be developed should be for all the property out there.
Yes.
It would be applicable to everything.
So the resolution will be that. It will be something that y'all set that sort of guides as these opportunities.
So do we need to set a date for that resolution to be done, or you'll do the resolution, or do we need a motion on that?
Well, just consensus. If y'all are good with me pursuing the resolution, I think
Just want
it's
to
good.
set forth a solicitation process where this property would be, the development by other developers would be made available to them as well?
So that is something we also need to talk about. So that is also an appropriate path in talking with Evan. If y'all decided you wanted to identify however many acres for whatever use, you say we want a restaurant, then you could put that out for public solicitation that we want, you know, whatever those parameters are. We want a sit-down restaurant of this, whatever kind, chicken restaurant, whatever it is you want. And then you can open that up for public solicitation. So that is also an appropriate path.
We have put this out, Mr. Donifru, ever since we've had the Endeavor property. We have been pushing this.
We've never done no
Anybody that
formal
doesn't know it in Jackson County
solicitation.
hasn't been listening.
Has there ever been a formal, I mean, in case we give this to
I-
Phil and we have some constituent come back and say, I didn't know anything about that. I wish I'd have known about that. I'd have done something.
Okay.
That's gonna happen on anything you do.
Yeah.
Well, I think David Meldon's office put up a sign, didn't they, ask for Cracker Barrels? It went on this property, wasn't it, we're behind Ruby Tuesday?
Yeah.
That 2 acres we own back there, they put a sign up about Cracker Barrels that you'll come or something, soliciting, we did something, you know. But
I don't have a problem with advertising it, but let's go ahead and how long will it take Evan to draw this up?
Oh, I think I could have that by the next meeting because the resolution is somewhat easy. It's going to be the details in the resolution that, you know,
Well,
we'll
we're
have to
gonna
work
give those
through.
to you this afternoon or this evening.
Well, at some point too, we don't have to look at the competitiveness of local too, because again, in this situation, I know we did the ordinance for the no-kill shelter for them. I mean, we started giving the land away to them, but we obviously put parameters.
That was different.
But if you get a situation to where you get someone local that wants to do a business, no matter who it is, and advertise versus someone that comes and find out you get land, a free land for a national franchise chain, locals won't stand a chance because they'll out compete them. So that just like I guess on our competitive way that we do local competitive for 5% or whatever, I don't know. I signed that piece of paper in December of 2018 for Dozier's, and there's yet one property on there beside the sheriff's office. And I think it's at this point, it's like, God bless. I mean, it's killing us. I mean, we have free property from the state to do something with, and we still 2 years later don't have anything to show for it.
Well,
we got a few things.
Well, I mean,
You're right.
nothing
We're
erected.
right.
There's nothing erected. I mean, it's all
Can-
theoretical
You're
beside
right.
the sheriff's office.
Okay.
We got
Can
somebody
we, can we set up some parameters for the resolution? Then we'll talk about the advertising. All right, number one, I think whoever's coming to us needs to bring us some drawings within, y'all tell me.
We said 6 months initially. 6 months is what we discussed. I don't think we did vote
I
on
don't
it.
think we need to give, well, how long does it take to do a set of draw, and I'm not talking about certified drawing.
Okay, well, that's
I'm
a
talking
different.
about, bring us
Yeah,
a sketch of what you're going to do. Can we give them 60 days,
I would say
90 days.
90 days?
Yeah,
Okay with that?
Yeah,
All right.
90 days.
Then the next thing is, okay, they're gonna have to present
They need to give us some type of
certified
indication of-
drawing.
Some type of indication of how many jobs they're gonna produce and.
Well, that'll come with when the drawings, all of that comes.
Well, I mean, you know, are they gonna produce 2 jobs that are paying minimum?
And the
wage?
capital outlay.
Yeah, I mean, and what they're gonna spend.
Yeah.
But that should be when you get your initial drawing, and we can add that in there. Jobs, capital outlay needs to be part of the
Well,
resolution.
Well, Paul, let me ask this real quick. Paul, what's the average cost in Jackson County, because I don't build commercial here, of square footage of a building? Just what the land cost of a building, 200?
Retail like that, not including site development, probably $100 a square foot.
Right, 100.
Roughly.
All right, then the next
Not
thing,
including site development.
Right.
you guys help me out with this. The next thing, after we get an idea of what you're going to put there, the jobs you're going to create, and the wages and the capital investment, all right, what would be the next logical
I think
step?
the first step before we step out there, what fits there? Because again, we gotta measure what type of, I mean, in my opinion, just my opinion, the interstate is needing 3 things. 60,000 people, 19,800 cars a day goes east-west on that thing in a 24-hour period. What do they need? Food,
Gas and somewhere to
food,
stay and.
sleep,
somewhere
and
to eat.
retail. We're not gonna compete with retail for a while. When I'm talking about retail, I'm talking about Walmart, Lowe's. I mean, that's something that you're not gonna have come to the Boys Club exit. I don't see a Home Depot coming there. So what I said, make sure that it fits that. We don't wanna put, a bulk distribution of fuel processing plant there.
On the
I
We want
agree.
something that's right. So we gotta, again, define what fits there and what.
But that would come about when they come to us and say, I want to put up
5 acres of a.
I want 5 acres, I want to put up
What is it
a
you want to do?
motel.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to find out. What are you going to bring? What's the capital investment? What are the jobs? Now, what's the next step we want? And we're giving them 90 days to do that.
How long to build?
All
Yeah,
right, the build is going to
I don't
start
say 18 months, because it's gonna be hard to build up.
2 years,
At least a year.
Yeah, at least.
a year to start. To start.
I mean, I imagine, yeah,
2 years to complete.
yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, and then I would caution everybody on the 2 years. I know that a year probably is very practical, but you start building a 15,000, 20,000 square foot facility. I mean, it's hard to find people to build houses right now in 15, I mean.
Well, within reason.
Yeah, they can always come back to it. I mean, again, the investment to me, again, is exactly, if someone's bringing me a plan, and Paul knows this better, way better than I do. But if someone's went to expense after they brought us a preliminary drawing, and they spend the initial money on a site development and whether land's free or cost, wherever they are, they get a site development plan, engineers involved, and then they got HAVC and all that goes with the building. They're dumping tens of thousands of dollars in a project like that, I'm sure. And what is about 5 to 8% of the cost, total cost of the building roughly. So, I mean, at that point, they're kind of invested. So, again, that to me is their due diligence.
So when, it's 90 days to bring us a rough drawing. When do you want to see engineer drawings, site plan?
I would say the timeline, probably 3 months after that, the minimum, wouldn't you?
Probably 3 months.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah, so now.
6 months for
6
planning. I
months.
mean, you know.
6 months.
If it's a gas station,
Yeah, you
there's
got
gonna
it.
be permitting associated with putting those fuel tanks in the ground and, it's a little bit more complex.
So 6 months for the drawings and stuff. Mr. Chopin, you had your hand up. Come on up to the microphone. Miss Wendy's just occupying the chair. Oh, you got something you want to give us?
Yeah.
I got one. Thank you.
I'm glad you did it in color. It makes it look so much better for us.
But we still have things we got to
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
add to this. All right, go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
State your name for the record.
Shilpatala,
Common spelling.
reading.
Spell your name.
Shilpan, Shilpan. Last name Dalal, Dallal.
Thank you.
What you asking about submitting proposal, how much money, how much employment. I have submitted that year plus before to chamber and the county. I'm waiting. I
Okay.
sold my 2 businesses.
Okay,
I have sold my 2 businesses and I'm ready to move forward and start making development from long time.
okay, what we're trying to do, I know you're going to
No, what-
be affected directly or indirectly in what we're doing, but we're trying to establish a policy for, we got 671 acres out there.
Right.
We got a deal.
How much?
1,200.
1,278?
Well, there's 671 set aside for,
Okay. I was just gonna say, this is, I think you've talked to commissioners, but this is our first time
I know.
trying to set up
I
stuff
try
for the
to
whole
convey my
thing.
intent to chambers and like that I want to do this, I want to do this. That's what I'm saying. But anyway, what I'm saying is, I have placed a lot of effort. I have waived so many opportunities I have because I thought if I can have a business here in Jackson County, I also signed a contract to buy land in Holmes County and backed up with the faith that I'll have some opportunity here on this other exit or develop this side. I'll be benefited also, county will be, this area will be.
so let me ask you this. Did you submit to the community development plans for this piece of property?
Community development?
Yeah.
Health Department.
No.
But
I went to
what
chamber.
we're-
I went to chamber and disclosed my intent and everything.
Well, the
before.
chamber's not,
Well, I think he's economic
Economic
development.
development.
okay. We need to,
So what I'm trying to convey the board that I have spent a lot of time, okay, for this development, or I'm waiting that it may work or something may work, or, you know. But if I need to know, is that possible, not, viable, not, you know. As you asking me for time frame, I'm dealing with franchisee people, I am dealing with Chick-fil-A or other restaurant or franchisee. I also need answer in certain time if I can get from board that I have so much time to get approved, at least approved, you know, I can submit drawings, engineering, everything, whatever you want, I don't have a problem. I can start working. hard,
okay.
Okay.
I
All right,
think our
thank you.
situation is now, we have to set up some kind of policy to allow you to
Right.
get that.
And
So
you're mentioning it may be up to, as 2 weeks?
Well, what I was gonna recommend is that I have a resolution back in front of y'all in 2 weeks, with the understanding there may be some tweaks we have to make to some of these parameters, because what I was going to ask Evan is, send me what you see as sort of standard for a resolution. Let's start there. Then what we would enter into hypothetically with Mr. Dalal is a memorandum of understanding, just like y'all did with Blue Sky, that says, this is what we expect. He says, this is what I know I have to do. If any of those things are not done, it's just not done and the property's not conveyed.
Okay.
We get it.
But
I understand.
we need to, we got through the drawings, official drawings, the plans. When do we want to tell these businesses, you must start construction? Now, Paul, I think you said 1 year.
Well, I would say probably 18 months.
start or completed?
Start or?
Well, as how detailed I get it, I think I agree with them. When you talk about petroleum, which is tremendously DEP regulated, you talking about getting that soil bore test and all that, I don't know.
If I place order today, if I make payment to get a gasoline tank, 30,000 gallons, I'll get it after 9 to 10 months to get the tank.
9 to 10 weeks.
10
Months.
months,
Months.
that order. Yes,
And that's if you
that's
apply
what I was
today.
told.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, but that's different because.
That would be understanding that.
Yeah,
though.
I mean, what would be reasonable?
Not
I
start,
can complete the project within a year. I cannot, I think so. I may try, but I don't think I can
You
complete.
think 18 months?
Finish the project,
Start the project.
start here.
Yeah.
Yes, before 18 months.
and we're
Way
talking,
before 18.
and here we're talking about the whole property. You know, so we're looking at these restrictions, I mean, things for the whole property, not just you.
but-
Oh,
But
okay.
I'm glad you're
I'm sorry.
sitting here
But the
where we can
memorandum
ask
of
you.
understanding would be specific to
Project
each
specific.
project.
Yeah.
So
You're right,
we don't
what I
necessarily
was
have to-
telling him, it's not
Yeah.
just for
Yeah.
what he's wanting to do,
So-
this is the whole.
In the resolution, what I would say is for construction timeline, we would just reference that in an MOU that you enter into, you would identify a
Whatever the
construction
time is,
timeline.
Yes.
Then I would work with the specific developer depending on the project, understanding he has a whole different level of permitting to go through. And we would work those out,
Okay.
MOU
Yeah.
specific.
Yeah, but Mr. Law, how long would it take, just hypothetically change the thing, extract petroleum out of the equation and put a hotel? How much time would it need to say a 50-room hotel? How long would it take to do that same construction without the 9 or 10 wait for the petroleum tank? I mean, if you exclude,
I'm not putting motel initially.
no. I'm just using a hypothetical. Just if they told
I
you.
can give you an example.
Sure, absolutely.
If I'm buying any land, right now in Jackson County, I bought a couple of lands this
Sure.
year, okay, 2020. What I noticed, just to get surveyed an appointment, it takes 2 months, 60 days, just to get surveyed, not starting. Just marking point, getting.
Boundary
surveyed.
survey.
Yeah,
2
it
months,
takes a long time. Survey, appraiser.
Which
everything.
surveyor are you using?
Anyone else?
Any survey,
They're
all
all
over it.
busy.
I tried
They
a
all
lot.
busy.
I'm using South, Eastern and
Southeastern.
other local surveys, yes, sir.
Okay.
That's not unreasonable.
Yeah.
So
Well, they do roads.
let me
and all
just
these
make
roads.
sure we all understand. We want them to start within 18 months or whatever. How long is it going to, and then I can assume what you're saying is we will determine the build time based upon the project. And that will be set by the board depending upon the project.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because you
so-
had to treat every one of them differently.
Well, they're
They
all
don't
gonna
get
be
such a
different
delivery.
based on if grant funding's involved.
Yeah,
If
that's right.
if it's not, if it's an
All right.
additional permitting process.
If it's a really large project.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it could be, yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about 50,000 square foot building that would be for blue sky. I don't know what that would take. I mean,
Again, probably for that type of building, a year at least from the time they put shovels in the ground to the time they finish it.
Yeah.
I would say 12 months.
All right.
Yeah.
Anything else that we need to put in
so
that?
we need
that
to,
we
what
could
we need
think
just
of?
consensus that you get that
Consensus.
started.
I'll email him now.
You email him.
She already
No,
started.
no,
All right.
Evan, to get him rolling.
Chopin, we have a meeting in 2 weeks,
Yeah, you'll be at it.
all right?
Yes, sir.
We should have the resolution put together.
Okay.
And one more suggestion, what she was saying, that you're gonna put some criteria, if I don't meet criteria, county gonna take the property back.
That's correct.
If I'm saying I'll create 15 employment, I don't know the economy, how it's gonna be after 2 years. But if I can employ just 12, not 15,
Yeah.
or 3 employees, am I gonna lose my property?
No,
Or the investment or
No.
whatever?
No, we'll look at that.
Just
Mr.
consider everything.
We'll be
Right,
reasonable.
right. I'm doing business, okay?
Right. That's
So I don't lose money and I have to pay my
No, I don't
mortgage.
Well, I would think the common sense of any board would say, if you go out there and if you're at that point going from 15 to 12 employees and you've got substantial upper 6 or low 7 figures involved, that would, I would not sit up on this board and not raise my hand for extension.
Okay? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so
for your time.
much.
Thank you.
Ms. Willan,
I don't have anything else.
Mr. Donifro,
I'll save mine till the meeting tonight.
Commissioner Hill,
I have nothing. I might.
Commissioner McKinney.
Nothing, sir.
Okay, we'll be cranking back up at 6 o'clock. Okay, Fred, is there anyone in the public got anything to say?
Any member of the public have a question to ask? You may use the raise hand feature via Zoom on your computer or *9 on your telephone. We do have one person with their hands up, Ms. Deborah Buckhalter.
Go ahead, Miss Deborah.
Can you hear me now?
I got you. Go ahead.
So I never did quite understand there with the gentleman. Did you all, are you all going to give him this piece of property that he's speaking of at this point, or is it going to go out to the process that Mr. Donifro was speaking of as far as the fair opportunity deal, or where does he stand, or where does that issue stand at this point?
We are not conveying that property this evening. We are developing a resolution that will be applicable to all the property out there. And once we get that, then we will deal with Mr. Chopin.
Thank you.
And
I appreciate it.
that should be prepared for the next meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. That all, Fred?